you can see the casting clamped in the vise with its base against a V-block, with a second V-block to hold it fixed to the table, a couple of squares to check that everything is as it should be. Yesterday I set up the engine, the casting for boring, and then I didn't have time, and it was already way too late to do the rest, so I left it for today. And I'm now ready to start boring out the two most important holes in the casting, which are the hole 6mm for the spool valve and the 15mm hole for the cylinder. Yesterday I created one additional layout line, which is an indication for the center of the casting body. That is a center line which runs all through the which runs through the center of the casting. Well, obviously not the center of the cylinder part, but the center of the body of the casting up to the end, so it's the center line of everything. That line we use as a reference, and in lieu of a DRO, I will use my hand wheel to set the offset. So we are going to start with the hole for the spool valve. My center bore at the moment is at center, and the offset has to be, according to the drawing, 10mm. So that's 5 thirds. I'm locking the table. Now I can double check this with my calipers, if I can find them, that is. Well, I guess I'll see afterwards how that shows up. And I'm only using it as a check to see if I did not accidentally turn 2mm too far a whole turn. That doesn't seem to be the case. Besides, this looks quite okay for me. So I guess there's nothing else than to start it. Of course, these are the holes which decide the success of the whole project. If you mess up one of these, then you can start all over again. So it would be, it's not a shame to be extra double careful. And in the case you are filming it like me, you have to beware extra of the YouTube effect, where you also have to watch what your camera is doing. So let's hope that we are successful on this. I'm going to center drill it, then drilling it 5.5mm with a regular drill, and then run a reamer through it for 6mm. One other thing I wanted to mention. I think before I said I wanted to drill the holes, this one here for the steam port, and the hole for the spool valve, the through hole from the side of the body here. I wanted to drill those first, but I've had second thoughts on that. There are several reasons for doing one or the other. What I thought was that initially was that if you are drilling this hole first and then subsequently you drill the center hole, you have much less of a burr inside. On the other hand, if you do it the other way around, it's still perfectly possible to clean out the burr, and at least you have a good view of your holes, and you're able to reach everything, because this hole is to be plugged afterwards, and it would be a bad idea to drill it, plug the first part, drill the through hole, and then discover that your steam port is blocked. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it just like I did the first casting, and see how we deal with the burr and with the little chips that stay behind in the hole. So I did not mark out where this hole has to be, because I have already marked out the center of the casting, and I know the offset according to the drawing, and that should be enough. So here we go. For a center hole, I guess that's plenty. Now probably I'm going to take all these tool chases out, because they are supposed to be boring. What I have to do next is take out the center drill, of course. But I also have to switch out the collet, because this is a 1/4 inch, and the next collet is going to be for 5.5 millimeters. Seems like I never used this collet before. It's still in its original package. Now I have more than one drill size 5.5 millimeter, and I have a set of precision drills in steps of 1/10 of a millimeter, and I prefer to use the drill from that set to drill this hole. I'm going to do this drilling operation dry. Now we do not need to bother about the depth, because we are going to drill entirely through. And that's it. We are through. That's a nice hole. Now of course I'm going to use some lubrication on this, but not oil or WD-40. I'm using cutting fluid. I have it in this dedicated oil can, and actually it's a mix of cutting oil and water. I'll apply more when we are underway with the operation. Speed down. Okay, I had to double check on the other side. You can't see it, but we are through. And as far as I can see, it looks like a decent hole. I have to clean it up before I can really say something about it, but it went quite well. The reamer went through without a problem, so I guess we are okay. Next one is tool change. Move the mill and prepare for the big hole, for the cylinder. $16 or thereabout. And that again seems to be a winner. So here we go. That's plenty. This is another through hole, so I don't care about depth settings. I can simply continue drilling until I'm completely through. Well, since these holes are somewhat bigger, I'm starting with a 8mm drill. You don't need to call it for that. I think I'm going to go 8, 12 and then up to the final drill size, which is 14.5. And after that we run the reamer through her. And this problem I mentioned earlier with chips sticking, it's especially the case with cast aluminium or perhaps home cast. I don't know. The deeper you get, the more problematic the chip removal becomes. But fortunately, now I'm through. So on the next round it will probably be a bit easier, because then the chips can also fall through the bottom. This one was, as you understand, a blind hole. So the only way for the chips out was through the top. Next size. This is my 12mm high-speed steel drill. Yeah, it goes in. Here you can see what I mean with chips sticking to the drill. But we should be almost through now. Yeah. And then what we have here is a brand new drill, 14.5. Now, what can go wrong with a new drill? Stick around and see. Almost too sharp. But so far my setup seems to be holding quite nicely. And we are through again. And then last but not least, my brand new 15mm reamer. It's also never been used. Now you're supposed to run the reamers at slow speed. In this case, $250 or thereabout. I think it wants even more lube. Okay. Here you don't want to be sparing with your cutting fluid. Okay. That was the end of my travel, but I was almost half a centimeter past the bottom of the hole. I'll lower the quill a bit and do it again, because I want to be sure that the tapered part of the reamer is past the end of the hole, otherwise the last bit would be slightly undersized, and that would be a bad thing when I want to fit the piston in later on. I see I also need some compressed air, because I'd like to blow out this hole first. I have a little bit of air in my compressor. Okay. That should be enough. So now I'm going to run the reamer through once more to be sure that I get to the full depth. So, if you see what the reamer still picked up, I think that was a good decision. So basically that completes this step. I'm going to clean up a bit here, and also I'm taking the part out, because there's no other hole that we can drill in this setup. I think so far we've been quite successful. It looks quite good actually.